see. Oh, okay, we can figure this out. All right, so we're here to talk about conversion right after lunch. I hope you guys are really, really stoked. You know, as much as we all love to live in the big picture, the reality is a lot of our time ends up boiling down to how can I prove that I'm doing what I said I'd do with the money that I have, right? So, you know, historically, marketers specifically have spent a lot of time in this space, especially as these gold standard metrics continue to evolve and change. And, you know, we're trying to make them fit within our existing strategies. So I just wanted to take a little quick show of hands here. Who in this room has used impressions to show their board or stakeholders their campaign's success? Ooh, not very many people. I'm kind of surprised about that. What about website sessions or you know, social followers? Yeah. Are you raising your hand?
No. Trying to see.
And then, you know, how many people have dollar signs linked to their marketing efforts to try to prove their success? Not as many as the impressions. That's pretty surprising. Okay, how many of you guys have really wanted to pull your hair out because none of these actually match up to the big picture, big things that you're trying to do with your teams? Yeah, a few of you, right? So these metrics aren't evil by any means. There's definitely a place for them, but that place is not in the boardroom anymore. You know, just yesterday, one of the panelists was talking about how he's still trying to explain, you know, what an impression is to his board, and that's a really big waste of big picture energy, right? You know, and maybe you guys aren't, you know, quite as lucky as him with your boards and stakeholders, but you know, as technology is changing, we really need to be ready to tackle what's next with these metrics. Dean and Christian are both leaders when it comes to this metric evolution. We're going to ask them a few questions to talk about how they have experienced success and possibly challenges or failures in this transition for the shifting tide in metrics for travel and tourism. So I'm going to start with Dean. Dean.
Yes.
Can you please elaborate on what your destination was going through that prompted this metric shift in reporting?
Yes. So I came on board January 1st, 2019 in our DMO. I had come from our sports commission. Just a quick background, I brought it over. We merged, became one thing. But in 2018, the year before that transition happened, before I came over, the DMO was defunded by $1 million. And as I like to tell the staff, that was not a shot across the bow, that was a shot straight through the hull. And we were not put on notice anymore, or they were not put on notice anymore, but now it was time to take some action. So we really had to reinvent ourselves. So, you know, I walked into that situation, and that's what we had to clean up. And the first thing we did was really ask the question of the stakeholders and the partners is like, where are the gaps in confidence for you here? What is this organization not answering for you? And that was the beginning of the conversation. And a big part of that was getting away from generalized, what we called fluffy metrics that were just part of the greater ecosystem, and being able to more articulately define the results of our work specifically and with precision and in a way that was believable, relatable, and created confidence with those partners.
So some of the fluffy metrics that you're referencing, I think, is typically what we refer to as these indirect indicators. You know, part of this tectonic shift in our conversion reporting that has been occurring over the past several years is this shift that travel and tourism really used to only have these indirect indicators like your impressions, your clicks, your reach, maybe your website traffic at our fingertips to be able to describe our success to our stakeholders. But now what we're seeing is a lot of organizations, I did see some hands who are talking about these dollar signs that they're able to link into their efforts. We're seeing this shift into these direct indicators. And if you're not already in this space where you are reporting on direct indicators, then you're a little bit behind the game here, because these have been available for travel and tourism for some time now. You know, Christian, as a strategic leader for your clients, you're often one of the people recommending the metrics that are being used to report on success. what made you shift from these indirect metrics to more of the direct measurement for your clients?
It was one instance in particular where we were presenting kind of our campaign wrap report, and this is about 5 or 6 years ago, and everything was rosy. Impressions were up, click-through rates were up, cost per click was down. I mean, generally speaking, the advertising we knocked it out of the park. And never forget, we were kind of wrapping up with a funding board for one of our clients, and feeling pretty good about things. And then one of the hoteliers on the board was like, this is all really great. Can you tell me what this means? And that was really kind of an inflection point, I think, for me and for our organization in the value that we bring to our client relations is, while we want to manage, the advertising metrics, really going beyond the advertising metrics and really putting a value behind the tourism dollars. Ultimately, we don't want to be in a scenario for our clients, in the scenario that Dean was in, where there's no real, apart from marketing metrics, value behind what the DMOs are entrusted with and what we as an agency are entrusted with. So we really took a hard look at the metrics that we were reporting on, and putting ourselves in the shoes of the stakeholders, and what is going to show accountability, what's going to show that we're being good stewards of the money here, and really it comes down to the value of the marketing and being able to put real dollars behind the marketing effort.
I think that's kind of, drawing that line between which of these metrics are you using to show yourself that you're being successful in these smaller increments, and which ones are you separating for those bigger picture people. I don't know, Dean, how you might react if somebody came to you and they were like, hey, we served this many impressions, we did a great job, but I don't think you would care.
We would not care.
Right. So I guess, through the process of making these shifts, is there anything in particular that you guys learned that might be helpful for people who, are in this kind of before stage of making this shift to using these more direct measurement techniques, or like any signposts where like it's time, other than, it's time?
The time is now. I think, you can't wait too long. I think the time for sure is now. The nature of the conversations that we are having, not only with our DMO clients, but also in the board's retreats that we're involved with, or with other stakeholders, really, I think the expectation, has really evolved in the last few years. If anybody is from e-commerce or has an e-commerce background, which was my background prior to working at DVA, reporting at the end of a campaign on clicks and impressions would get you out of a job pretty quickly. Like, you really need to be able in e-com to kind of show, okay, what is the return on this investment? And it's been a challenge in tourism for a long time to actually articulate that. And I think now with the tools available and the technology, the time is really now to really start doing that. And I think it also can help change the nature of the conversation around the value of tourism, not just the heads and beds metric, which I think is, typically what a lot of what stakeholders are looking for clients to drive. Okay, heads and beds, but tourism as an economic driver, as economic development within communities, is so much larger than just heads and beds. For sure, that is a big piece of it, but understanding what day trip value is within a destination, it really starts to broaden the impact that people within your community will see around tourism efforts, and really help, show the value there.
Anything from you, Dean, or is it more just don't wait long enough to lose your budget?
Yeah, certainly. I think you don't want to be on the recoil end of that that hit. But if you're not doing it now, you are too late. I suspect that most of you, if you've bought a plane ticket to come to an e-tourism conference that's this specific, you're probably involved in this. But I do always frame the situation as well as just remember to start at the top with what do you get paid to do, right? And it's different for everybody. We've got about 1,500 DMOs in the country, about 700 of which are what we would deem mature enough to be in this, and I mean mature enough by size, development, market, all that, to be in this space, and probably about 450 to 500 that absolutely should be. So I hope that most of you in here are within that 400 to 500 range of DMOs that are participating in this, and and if your DMO is in a situation where your market is asking you, if they're saying, we get that there's this tourism ecosystem, we get that there's this many travelers happening and what's going on, but if they're pointing the finger back at you and saying, but what of it is yours? What are you doing in our market? What are you delivering? If we're paying you to advertise this, show us your work metrically. That's where this rubber hits the road, right? That's where we had to get into this to solve that problem, and not just course correct, but we doubled. We lost. We're mid-sized market, so we're $5 million market. By the way, full disclosure on that. So we went below 2 million when I was coming in because of that hit. We're at 5 now. So not only did we patch the hole, but we built confidence, and we took our most contentious segment of work, something that was making just a single % numbers of return, and now it's almost 40% of our business. So that's a paradigm shift. That's a market disruption for us, and it's changed how our partners fund us and how they believe in us and the confidence they have in us.
That really leads to our next topic, which is really how you steward that money for your clients, for your own organization, and for your stakeholders. So I know, Christian, you were mentioning some of this a little bit earlier, where you were talking about using these direct metrics to make better decisions and to be a better steward of your clients' money. Does this scare you a little bit to be held to that level of accountability? And why would you shift from these indirect measurements to these more direct ones?
Yeah, I think, maybe initially there's some trepidation around putting dollar signs into reports, especially for stakeholders. And certainly, the indirect indicators, we use those in all sorts of different ways. So it's not to say that those aren't there, but again, sort of throughout the pandemic and post-pandemic, I think the scrutiny of what tourism is doing has just increased. And so the ability to point at what Dean was saying is a direct economic impact just helps us maintain trust and accountability with both our clients and stakeholders. So we can feel like we are good stewards of the funds that we're entrusted with. And I think, once we kind of got past a little bit of, worry about what that was going to look like, I think it's new. It's a new conversation, a relatively new for a lot of people. So just the fact that there's dollar signs in reporting is a big step forward. And so they, a lot of the audiences weren't really ready for it either. So, sort of once we kind of got out of our own way about worrying about it, it's actually been a great way to connect with funding boards around specific campaign funding, and just sort of looking at how our clients have changed the nature of the conversation with whether it's city or any whatever the municipality is or the funding mechanism. It's really changed their position in the conversation and really put them in the driver's seat of saying, look, this is a good investment, and here is the money to show that it is.
And I know, Christian, we talked before about how, one metric might not be good enough. I know we all love that because, metric overload. But I know that I have heard you talking about being a good steward of your clients' money and making sure that not just one metric is improving, but that you are anchoring that in additional signals. Can you tell us a little bit more about the metrics that you like to rely on for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, so having been in e-commerce, you know, like the customer acquisition cost, you know, it's been really fun to kind of dig into tourism marketing the same way that you might if you were selling widgets on the internet, and being able to put some of those similar costs associated with attraction and costs of campaigns into the reporting. So I think those kinds of things are really fun and new ways to kind of be able to start talking about the efforts. You know, again, there are just the ability to sort of show to the number of people that are going to various places that are within your destination. So it's not just hotels, but what are the other things that are benefiting from your marketing? You know, we partner specifically with Datafy, who on the front end does a geo boundaries around hotels and any specific polygons that we want to look at. So being able to see, cool, this campaign around this attraction brought these people into this specific attraction. So it really does start to close the conversion gap, and that's just a really fun way to connect the effort with the outcome.
That's really great. I know, Dean, you didn't really have the same flexibility to discover how you were going to present this as a shift and like set up how you were going to be a good steward of the money. You were really doing this as more of a reactionary shift. I would really like you to speak to what you did to find the metrics that you were going to use to increase your funding and how that played out for you.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was a reaction, but it was interesting because at the time, this is for us 2019, 2020, it wasn't like a reaction where we knew where we had to go. We had to figure it out, right? We had to, this market was emerging for DMOs our size. At this time, if we just kind of look at the geolocation center of this as kind of the core technology, you know, to go back 2015, 16, 17, 18, you know, a $2 to $5 million size DMO, this was not on the conversation table, right? You couldn't afford this kind of stuff. So this was just starting to change at that point. So we're trying to determine how to get to this. I guess this kind of, if you want to go to the next slide, it kind of tips into this a little bit. But I want to, for context, frame real quick that so that, you know, we have three main pillars of business in our DMO. So we have a sports commission, we have our convention and meeting sales group, and then we have leisure. So this conversation that we're having on this stage right now is wholly pinned on our leisure segment only. So those other two groups are group business, and we've got that thing going on. And at this point in our life cycle, we're almost equal in all three pillars in delivery of what we're producing. We are, for good or for bad, it's just what it is. We are a DMO that is room nights first. That is at the sword of our funders, right? They've you know, brought in feasibility and consultants, and they're like, this for now at this point in our life, that's our North Star. So we have to start there. So I know that doesn't apply to everybody, but it definitely applies to us. So when we show this slide, I think it's up there on the side there. It's you know, we look at that top left metric, and we know when that hotel number is right, that all of the other metrics that line up second through whatever are going to be right. Right? That's a big piece for us. And as we get into that, again, looking for compelling, actionable data that inspires confidence, this was the shift for us. This was the way to go from saying just impressions, but to impressions that showed as much trackability as can be demonstrated in the world today to get us to these points. And that was the climate shift completely for us, right?
How did you present this to your funders as the next route you were going to take? What kind of questions did you get from them before embarking on this shift?
The way we presented this to our stakeholders, I think we enjoy a good relationship with them because they appreciate our logic-based curiosity. We lead with that in our relationships, right? So we don't make marketing happen to them. We make marketing happen with them. So we take them along the journey so that they understand what's going on. So we avoid some of the more common industry lexicon language that has lost its meaning because it's been repeated so many times and it doesn't have it. People kind of bob their head to it, but kind of weakly. They're like, "Oh, I think I agree." You know, that's kind of that's not good. So we take those stakeholders on this journey into this to say, with you, we are trying to push the next level on this. We hear the problem. We're looking at the problem together on the table with you, and these are the things that we think make sense to solve this. Do you agree? And if you get somebody who doesn't agree on this, it's pretty weird. You know, I mean, it's a strange moment for everybody. You're just like, I don't know, maybe they were asleep, you know, but it's something emotional. I don't know, who knows what's going on, but it's, you know, it's a very, very logic-based solution that is hard to argue with, and it is leading edge, and it has changed, right? Like this, what this looked like for us when we started these conversations in 19 and 20 does not look like what it is right now. So we have to keep nurturing that conversation and training and coaching our stakeholders through the progressions, through the evolutions of digital marketing, through the evolutions of privacy and security and the battles between Google and Apple and what's going on with that stuff, and not to drown them in it, but just to keep them, so we're holding hands with them on it, so that they're as confident in it as we are. You know, some days we're not confident, some days we are. You know, it's a tough journey, but we stay with it, and so that's what the conversation looks like to get there. And
So Christian, I think your experience is probably a little bit different from his, because depending on the client, you may have direct access to the board or stakeholders who need to understand this, but probably more often you don't. And so I'm wondering how you explain this type of stewardship with these types of metrics to your clients or even to boards. And, you know, how do you keep people from going down, you know, weird rabbit holes or asking those questions that you guys are already looking at, but they probably shouldn't be focused on?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love curiosity wherever it comes from, so I always encourage those hard questions, and hopefully we're prepared to answer them. But, I mean, in terms of how we explain this, I mean, there's the technology behind it. There's no other way to say it. It's creepy, right? I mean, so much of what we do as marketers, it's a little bit creepy, but like, you know, I think you sort of reconcile with that, and then, you know, you just have some honest conversations. All of this obviously is above board, right? We're all trying to function well with the privacy guidelines and everything that's set, but, you know, so, you know, we will, because the nature of who we're generally working with, we'll dig into, you know, very specifically how a lot of this stuff works, and why it works, and, you know, we can talk about the mechanics of it and all of that sort of stuff. But, you know, sort of at the end of the day, I think it's just when we start to talk about what we're reporting on and how that reflects against what we're spending, whether that's at the DMO level or what we're entrusted with as an agency, we just start to build trust around the process and what we're doing. And so when the random questions come up, whether they come from C-level individuals or stakeholders or folks on the board, you know, I think we're all pretty well prepared to handle the conversations.
I think it really does just boil down to, you know, if you gave me $1 and I gave you 11 back, that's probably a pretty good explanation for why this.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, you know, again, like, I wish I had that when I was asked by that board member, you know, what does this all mean? Because, you know, 3.5 million impressions doesn't really mean much.
Yep. All right. So I know we're talking about all these metrics, right? And it sounds like we're telling you guys you need more metrics. That's not really necessarily true. It's really a shift in what you are prioritizing reporting on, right? These types of metrics can really help you understand some of the route performance, where can you actually improve versus focusing on some of these metrics that don't necessarily link back to those big picture goals, right? So Dean, I know that you have really led the charge in your region, in your area at Pierce County to move toward these advanced metrics, and I've seen a lot of others be more interested in this because you share some funding sources. How has this shift opened the door for other cooperative entities or to follow a similar path forward, or how has it created opportunity for a larger success story for the community as a whole?
First, I want to lead with a tip to you for your market, and that is if this conversation, if this stuff is new to you or you're bringing this back into your market, triple down, get out ahead of it so that by the time your partners are blown away by it, all they can do is join you. So, we kind of took the cover of the pandemic to investigate this and get really good at it before we pulled a big trigger. And then when we went live and we got out there with it, we started showing everything. It attracted more partners to us, like fireflies to a light, right? They were like, they didn't want to go out and try to re-spend their own money to recreate that. They weren't going out and trying to compete with us on that. They said, we want to partner up with you on that. You've done so much work on this already, that you've laid so much track that it only makes sense for us to be closer to you and help support that. And so, great for partnership and collaboration and just, smart big strategy to strengthen your position as an authority in your market, right? You want to be that. And as we know, as DMOs, we don't own these venues, we don't own land or whatever. There's a lot of liabilities we are on the other side of the line of sometimes. So when you get a chance to kind of surge ahead in a knowledge expertise sector like this, is a great tactical strategy to align some partnerships in your area.
I'll just add to that. In our experience, for larger regional DMOs or statewide or whatever, if you have DMOs that work within your area, this just really helps build collaboration between those entities. We have a couple different examples of county-wide efforts that have, they've shown stakeholders across the county the fruits of the work that has gone into the county DMO work. And, all these municipalities, they see the results, they want to jump on board. Now we're aggregating funds across county and city and really supporting campaigns that are specific to the city within the county framework. And so we're really having this really cool flywheel effect where, people are just jumping on board, maximizing resources, and they're able to take it back to individual municipalities that would never really sort of jump on these kinds of opportunities, and really provide a level of insight and reporting that just is way beyond what is expected or oftentimes what those entities are capable of. And so you really get the entire region on board, or it can really get an entire region on board, so that really everyone is benefiting from the efforts at the larger level.
And that can be a really big deal, especially if you're trying to really be the pilot of your destination. You really want to make sure that you're leading in the right direction and that people know how to tack on to what you're doing. So I guess, it's always a little bit bigger than advertising. If you can make it a little bit bigger than your advertising results, that's always going to be beneficial for you as an organization and all of the entities who are cooperating with you. So Dean, how do you contextualize these metrics, whether related to advertising or the data that informs your advertising, to help solidify any sort of destination management or conversations about what to do next in your community?
Well, the good news is we have a lot of metrics to choose from that we can design that narrative specific to the need. We have a pretty big footprint, so we've got 23 cities and towns, about half of which are unincorporated, but a big footprint, so 1 million people in our market. And so the answer, and we have everything from a national park, super rural, to, you know, a huge port, 4th largest military installation in the world, 10 miles of shoreline, you know, pretty dynamic. So we really have to kind of to contextualize the data, take it case by case. You know, what we have sectors where we have over tourism, and we have sectors where we have under tourism, and we have sectors that didn't exist 5 years ago, where new developments have gone in, and we're just straight up introducing tourists for the first time ever. So it's a very wide array. So the metrics that support each of those are different, but we have them, right? We can literally look at this from a, you know, how much water is in the glass type thing, and how much water do we need to pour in, and how much is that water going to cost to fill that glass, you know, those types of things, and how, you know, and develop from there. So it really steers us from a strategic and tactical standpoint with best possible, you know, information that's not indirect. It's very direct. So.
I'll just say we have clients that are still, for one reason or another, using a lot of the indirect measures in reporting, and we're certainly seeing, you know, occupancies and ADRs sliding, and in those communities where occupancy isn't kind of pushing back to where it was a couple of years ago, the scrutiny of the DMO, you know, it's high, and when we're reliant on, you know, sort of these indirect metrics, it's a lot harder to position the clients well within their stakeholder conversation, or at least it's not as easy. So there's, you know, I don't know where that falls, but that's definitely, you know, sort of a good case study for getting on the bandwagon.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Christian, I know a lot of what you do goes a little bit beyond just this deterministic attribution, return on ad spend. You guys are really on the monthly reporting cycle, if you will, like everybody else kind of falls into. And I just wanted you to speak a little bit to how the conversations you have on a monthly basis with your staff and with your clients has changed since really switching the focus to these more direct measurements.
Yeah, I think so. Back on the occupancy thing, you know, we definitely see, you know, across a lot of the destinations that we work with, the occupancy, you know, struggling to get back to where it was a couple of years ago. ADR's held strong. You know, I think we want to be careful about what attribution-based marketing is going to promise, right? I think domestic travel is experiencing some issues just because they're macro issues. And we're not here to say that attribution-based marketing is going to fix any of these things, but I think when the conversations get difficult, it's much easier to have conversations about the efforts, whether there are efforts or the collective effort of us and the DMO, when we have something really concrete to kind of hold on to. So I think that's like a bit of the, you know, it's sort of great to have that when those conversations get really challenging around, well, you know, occupancy's down by 15%. How do we fix that? Well, we're not necessarily here to say that we're going to fix 15% drop in occupancy, but what we're going to do is change the nature of the conversation in terms of, you want to keep, you know, working because you can see that the return on that investment is paying dividends, right? So it's just making the case to continue the funding, to stay with the program, and, you know, showing the value during those hard times when people are kind of looking at the DMO to really turn things around. And without those, again, it's a harder conversation to have because, you know, the hoteliers don't care about the impressions. They want to see how many room nights that you actually generated at their particular hotel. And so having this level of attribution is incredibly powerful when things kind of get hard.
And I would say that always works really well when the numbers are pretty rosy. You were talking about some situations where the numbers aren't so rosy, and I know, Christian, we've personally had some conversations about how that helps you, confirm that your disagreement with somebody may have been correct, right? Which I'm sure marketers have had those conversations with boards, or no offense, they're CEOs. But it really gives you that catalyst to make better decisions for the next time too, and that data to back it up. I don't know if you have anything else to add related to that.
Well, I was going to say that, amen to that, what he brought there, and that, you do have to be cautious with attribution marketing. This isn't going to change everything, but we're 2 years now in a row into, we talked earlier about what you do when your stakeholders say, show me what you did, show me your work, versus the ecosystem, right? And we're 2 years into still a repressed ecosystem with record-breaking work, right? So our highest outputs ever under what is still a down system. So both can exist at once, and given the moment, the technology of the day, and what we can do with the attribution models, it is the best tool available in that conversation piece to move that forward. And we will have to respond with that tool, as we navigate whatever happens with the big ecosystem of travelers in that leisure segment.
All right, I know we're nearing the end of our time. I'm going to ask them each one more quick question, and then I think we might have time to take a couple of questions. So I'm going to start with Dean. Well, it's going to be the same question for both of you, so Christian, think. If you had to choose like 1 to 3 top metrics that you like to use, what would they be?
Start with Christian.
I think being able to show the total economic value of a campaign is pretty powerful. Obviously, many of you are probably driven by funding boards where the lodging community has a loud voice in the room. But I believe that tourism marketing, is really becoming the parts are as meaningful as I think I got that wrong. But point being is there's more to it than just the room nights. And so showing the full economic value of a campaign is incredibly powerful, and then also breaking it out for the hotel community, seeing what you were able to provide that community. Those two things, you start to turn the tide and the nature of the conversation in the room when you're speaking their language. Cool, like you're actually driving room nights. Thank you. And that's probably one of the more powerful things when that starts to translate.
Yes, and we flip it in that because our stakeholders, I mentioned this earlier, we're a room night first destination because that's what they want. So we start with that metric, but then we bring them the other metrics, which may in fact be bigger metrics, right? But to meet them where they are and at their demand and their interest first, we start with that, and that's important. But that conversation is different if you're dealing with a room full of hoteliers than with the hotel metric. If you're dealing with a room full of city managers, economic metric. So.
Yeah, and that's really just the difference between the data point and what you're using to contextualize that data point, which is a really important thing, and it will vary by every destination for sure. Well, does anybody have any questions for these gentlemen? I want to put them on the spot, make them work. I see one there. Did you guys hear him? Yeah. Okay. Did everybody else hear him?
You want to restate the question?
So he's asking, he says you can't report complete OTA data. So how are you sharing that? Is it, I'm assuming extrapolated was the question, or is it more raw? And are you sharing that with your board? How are you sharing that with your board?
I'm not going to answer this the way I think you want me to, but I'm going. It varies. It really depends on the moment, what the appetite of the room is, what they're looking for. We are prepared to show as much as we can, as they want to see under the hood. We're extremely transparent with how this works. We try to always present both our data and our curiosities with, kind of a scientist-like curiosity. We like to share the problem on the table and not just present them metrics and data as though they were in a stone scribe. We come at this with the, if you want to look at it this way, here's the results. If you want to look at it this way, here's the results. And let them kind of salt to taste, right? Let them absorb which of that narrative they find compelling. One of them will be, if not all of them, but.
I know we're out of time, but I saw one more question. I think we're done, though. You guys can find us. We'll be around.
Thank you.
Thank you.